Yo, what's up, everyone? And thank you for joining us this afternoon. I am Annie Hobson. I use she, her pronouns. I am the senior manager for K through 12 student leadership here at Active Minds. And for those of you who may not know what Active Minds is, let me school you a little bit. So Active Minds is one of the leading organizations, nonprofit organizations worldwide that we're literally changing the conversation about mental health and mental health education and awareness for young people, young adults like yourself. So today I am joined by two amazing Active Minds students, and we're going to have a conversation about how we prioritize self-care during the school year. So Anushka and Zoe, before we dive into everything, do you two just mind telling us a little bit about yourselves, your school, how you got tied into Active Minds, and a little bit of what makes Active Minds so awesome for you two?
Yeah, I could start. Hi, everyone. My name is Anushka. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a rising sophomore at NYU studying psychology. I actually got involved with Active Minds my sophomore year of high school, and actually, my current best friend introduced me to Active Minds. So we co-founded the club together, and I had just gone through some of my own mental health struggles. So finding a space to talk about mental health, finding a safe space in high school was really like transformative for me.
Thank you so much. I'm Zoe. I use she, her pronouns. I am a behavioral neuroscience major at University of California, San Diego. And I also kind of got involved in Active Minds in high school during my sophomore year. I just kind of gone through my own mental health journey, similar to Anushka. And Active Minds in my high school was just kind of starting up. So I thought it'd be a great place to be to kind of continue to work on myself and even begin to help others. And now I currently hold the position of president at my chapter at UCSD. So happy to be here.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you too for sharing just that small blurb, that small piece. I think it's vital for young people your age, high school, to know that, man, this whole mental health game this is not a joke. This is real, and we need to be able to support one another, our students, in any way that we possibly can. Before we dive into our first question, though, I do want to let you all know out there that Active Minds uses self-care resources throughout the year. So if you are interested, go ahead and head to that description box to find the link. We have resources out there for you to utilize. You're not doing this alone. We got your back. All right. So all right, let's dive in. So I'm going to start us off with just both of you. Just please share with us what are some of your self-care routines, or how have your self-care routines changed once school starts? Because we all know when school is out, we see it as, it's a break, it's kick it time, we can party. But once school starts, how do your routines change once you have to get back into the classroom?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can go ahead and start us off. For me, I think self-care for me definitely changes when I go back to school. I think one of the most important things about that change is I have to actively think about implementing self-care into my routine. I think that like during the summer and during breaks, it's easier to get rest and to like turn on Netflix and kind of just relax. But when you're in school, it's like you actually have to make time in your schedule to put that self-care in. But at the same time, I feel like self-care can become a bit easier because it can become more like a routine. For me, I feel like the school year becomes more like a routine than the summer or any sort of break. So when I have this routine of, okay, before bed, I like to put on a face mask and journal, then I can kind of implement that every night. Whereas in the summer, it's kind of unpredictable. So my self-care is a little bit more unpredictable. So I think for me, I just have to pay more attention and definitely take more breaks, especially in high school when your schedule is from super early to super late. It's really important to implement those breaks as it is in college. So yeah, I'll turn it to Anushka.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Zoe said about self-care changing as we transition from summer and then to school, college, high school, whatever it is. I think for me, one thing I really started doing recently that a friend had said that she did, and I thought it was a great idea, is like just like go to your Google Calendar and block out times for self-care. Like whatever, however you like create like your calendar, if it's like a paper like calendar, whatever it is, just block out times. And just like we prioritize, going to class, we have to prioritize this too, because without practicing self-care, we're overworking ourselves, and we could just burn out if we don't take a minute and be like, okay, this is just as important as that doctor's appointment, as that class, as that, like as therapy, like whatever it is. So that's something I have begun to do. And some of my like favorite self-care activities, I think one thing I've found is that self-care looks different for everyone. Like for Zoe was saying, like face masks and journaling. For me, I think it's also about, I think a form of self-care is setting boundaries, right? Like sometimes I want to like hang out with my friends. I want to like, like manage like my academic schedule and like study, but like sometimes you have to, like setting boundaries has been like so transformative for me, because I've learned that like saying no to things is okay, and like putting yourself first is a form of self-care. So I think that is something I've been working on. And also I just like, I live in New York City, so I love to go to dog cafes. I find them like it's just so therapeutic to like play with like little puppies. So I do that a lot. I like to rewatch old Disney Channel shows like Good Luck Charlie. Gives me like that feeling of nostalgia. So I love that. I listen to podcasts, things like that. So yeah.
I love that. I absolutely love that both of you kind of chimed in and gave like awesome tips and tools. You both talked about routine though, like, getting into a routine. So how difficult is that as a student to get in a routine? Because once you've come from the summer and you got to put your mind back into like student gear or the student focus, how difficult is that? And what tips would you give, our high school students for doing just that?
That's a really great question. I think there's a few different things that will help with that. I think Anushka had a really great point about like implementing self-care into your calendar. And so for me, I over organize on my calendar. So that's something I sometimes have to like relax a little bit about. But it's definitely helpful when you're starting the year to kind of write everything out, how your week's going to go. And that way you can try to start on your routine. I will say though, especially like if you're in that transition currently, like where you just finished high school and you're just starting college, that routine's going to be totally crazy for probably at least a few weeks. And I would like my best piece of advice for that is like, it's okay. Like you don't have to have like a set routine or a set schedule or anything like that now. I think self-care in that case could be just giving yourself a little bit of a break, a chance to explore, and then letting your routine come a bit later when you become a little bit familiar with your surroundings. And similarly, I did want to add on a really good point Anushka brought up about kind of being able to set boundaries. I think with routine, this really plays into it, especially in both high school and college. But I think a lot of people face fear of missing out. And sometimes this can be really harmful to your self-care or to what you really want to do in that moment. So I would say pay attention to that, pay attention to what you need, and you'll be able to like spend time with people later. Or if you really want to go spend time with people now, go ahead and do that, interrupt your routine. That's totally okay. But I think it's really important to just kind of give yourself some compassion, especially in that transition process. And then eventually it will come as you start to schedule more things, your classes are more regular, you understand how long it takes to do your homework, your extracurriculars, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Thank you. I love that. Anushka,
Yeah.
what are you adding to this?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love what Zoe was just saying about FOMO, because I think that's so real, especially in college. And one thing I wanted to touch on was, I think the transition between high school, from high school to college, is so significant, because in high school, it's a lot of like, you have this structure that, you know, like however, like sometimes school starts at like 8 a.m. till like, you know, whatever it is. My high school was like 8 a.m. to like 2:33, like every day, you know, that set schedule. And I think for some people that's great, for some people it's not, you know, but like learning to kind of like set your own routine in college is something that I struggled with. I was just a freshman last year. So kind of like figuring out like, you know, I have so much free time now. Like, what do I do? Like, you know, how can I occupy this time in a productive way? But I think what Zoe was saying is so important, to give yourself that grace and to give yourself like the space to also like figure it out. I think another important thing that I wanted to talk about was like, before trying to think of like self-care activities, maybe like take a minute. And I think for me, what I did was like trying to like understand what will work for you based on like the type of person you are. I know I would call myself like an extroverted introvert, because I love being around people, but I also get like a lot of my energy from being by myself too. So for my self-care routine, I would say that like I need to be by myself for like a good amount of time every day, you know, like without anyone else there. And I know like for some of my friends, they love to be like, you know, like to study with other people, to do things in groups, and that's like completely okay. But just knowing that like how you are and what activity will be best suited for you is so important. And I feel like that's just also becoming like, as you grow up, just becoming like more self-aware. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say about that.
No, no, definitely you are 100% right in that I believe like self-care is a part of knowing who you are. And that's self-discovery. I wish, I'm not going to date myself, but I wish when I was in high school, I had the self-awareness, you know, to know, hey, I need to figure out who I am, what I need, what I can recharge from, because I think I would have done a lot better as a student, just knowing that. So I'm going to back us up to 2020 when a monkey wrench got thrown into this whole scheme of things. So we're talking routine. We have our routines. I had a routine. My routine was dope. It was on point. And then COVID hit. And so for me, I know that my self-care routine, it got thrown all over the place, and I really had to restructure and refocus as an adult. So from your perspectives as a student going forward, because we still don't know where we're going to be in a couple of months, how did, you know, COVID impact your routine, and what would you say to students who are entering the school year or already started their school year as far as COVID, you know, is concerned? How do you keep a routine with COVID?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think for me it was a little bit similar to what you mentioned, Annie, about how you had like a routine and it completely got interrupted. I'm sure a lot of people can say that. I think I had a really nice like self-care routine pre-COVID, and like things I really really enjoyed doing that I could easily kind of pull out. Like I really like coloring and like doing things like that, like just in my room, like with some essential oils in the background, whatever. That's something I really enjoyed, something simple. When COVID hit, I would say like, you know, anxiety increased and my self-care started to look different. I wouldn't say I had a good routine like for months. I kind of had a like more of a difficult time finding something that made me feel comfortable. And I would say similarly, it kind of plays into your point about kind of self-discovery. I think when COVID hit, everyone's life kind of changed. So it's like, wait, who am I now that I can't like go out, do all these things? And so I think your idea of self-care changes. And I would say it took a really long time to find what I enjoyed again, like until going into college, that sort of thing. But in that sense, with COVID and all of that, I think one of the most important things is just like listening to other people's experiences and what helps them. Because I find like being able to relate to what other people went through and what other people find helps them, like really started to help me as soon as I kind of got out of my like isolation bubble, when I started to talk to more people and realize, oh, everyone's kind of going through this. Let me see like what I can learn. I think that's when I kind of started finding my way again. So I think as COVID continues and as school continues, just finding what other people do could really, really help you and kind of bonding with people in that way.
Thanks, Zoe, for sharing that.
Yeah, I think I had a little bit of a different experience just because I'm the type of person who loves routine. And I think that like when COVID hit, I like clung to my routine. Like I just like made, I definitely like it was at first I had to like come up with like a different routine. But you know, like once I did, I held on to that routine for dear life. Like when I tell you, I did not do anything else besides like I think at that point, um, it was my junior year, like the ending of my junior year. So it was like the time when I had to take my SATs, my AP exams, all of that. So it was very stressful not knowing whether like those exams would even happen. But I was like to myself, okay, listen, you have all this time to study. This is what you're going to do. You're not going to do anything else, you know, like, which was now retrospectively pretty unhealthy doing that. And I realize that now, but I think that like, that gave me almost that time, gave me like just something to do, like focusing on school was how I dealt with it. But I think I put too much energy kind of in that basket where like I didn't give enough time for me to like process how I was feeling. And one thing I also think is that I kind of like I also since I like I was saying before, I am the type of person who does enjoy spending a lot of time by myself and with my family. But I think to some extent, like after a while, I did feel like, you know, like I want to see my friends. I want to like do these things. And just like remembering that like in the future, it's okay to feel like disappointed that things aren't going your way. Like as like someone who likes control like of my own schedule and like, you know, like have everything in order, like it's okay to not have everything in order. It's okay to not know what's coming next, even though you might feel like you have everything figured out right now. You know, like sometimes like things will happen in your life that will like change the way you think, or like maybe an opportunity will present itself that like you never knew like something like that could happen. And giving yourself again like that grace and the patience to kind of like work through that is important. But one last thing before, like, sorry, this is like a very long answer, but I think another thing I really like to do is I look forward to the future a lot, and I look forward to like, you know, like dreams that I have or goals that I have. So I'd like make a lot of lists of like things that I wanted to do. Like once COVID was like, you know, like things like calmed down. So I'd make like little lists of like, you know, like at that point when I was in high school, I think I was like, you know, like when I'm in college, I want to do all of these things, you know, like I want to join these clubs. I want to like work on these projects with active minds. I want to like, you know, like just having those like dreams almost helps you with your, at least it helped me with my day-to-day like activities, because it gave me like this hope that like, okay, like I have these things that I want to do. So no matter what happened, I'm going to stick to these things. So yeah, that's what I would say for that.
No, and that's fine. There's no, that answer was not too long. That answer was perfect. It hit spot on. You both actually mentioned like, you know, we're still talking about this self-discovery piece, which you two are definitely, you got that nailed. You know yourselves. One thing you mentioned, Anishka, is even though you're a person that likes to be by yourself, I am like that as well. I also started to feel, man, I want to talk to someone. I want to talk to somebody has to listen to me. So I understand that. And so from that perspective, knowing that you don't have to carry this alone is really key. And so when we look at like the adults, our professors, our teachers and whatnot, what would you say is very, very beneficial from you know, that perspective? What do you need from us? What do students need from us to be supportive in self-care for students?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think now, especially as COVID has gone on, people have started to take find it more important to like support their students in that way, at least in my experience. But I think in terms of just adults or teachers or professors or whoever it may be to support students, I think one of the most important things is like encouraging self-care or encouraging the taking of breaks and also like encouraging usage of resources. I would say that in high school, I specifically remember we had like a night where an active minds speaker came to our high school and spoke obviously about mental health and really important subjects. And so, you know, as a school, all the teachers would make sure no one had homework that night due the next day so that everyone could go to the event and like be able to participate in this important conversation. And I think that one, like a lot more people came and experienced it because they weren't stressed about finishing homework and they felt like really supported and oh, like people care about my mental health in this way. And so I think like, you know, doing things like that, encouraging taking care of yourself is super helpful. I think, you know, that was really applicable to my high school at the time, but maybe not as applicable to my giant college. So I think just professors continuing to talk about mental health in their classes and how important it is to take breaks, and not overloading the students is always really helpful. And just in your conversations with adults, yeah, just that encouragement and even them telling their own experience about when they were a student, is always helpful to me too.
Um, I I think that also, I think it would be helpful. It sorry, I'm just gonna like, I think that sometimes it's a little bit tricky when it comes to professors and teachers because there is like a boundary between like, you know, what you want to share with your students and what you don't, like what's, you know, like you want your students to think of you in like a professional way. So you don't want to like, you know, overstep those bounds. And I think I understand that as a student, but I think also some of the best professors I've had in college so far are the ones that are able to be like vulnerable. And some of them have like shared sometimes like, you know, like I had this one professor who talked so much about like therapy and like mental health. And I was like, I listened to her and I was like in shock. And I was like, this is mind blowing that someone, you know, is talking about this stuff at like, you know, I never experienced that before. And that's awesome that like she was able to do that. But I think the minimum thing that like professors could do, like what Zoe was saying, is like, you know, make sure that students know the resources that are available to them, the counseling center, you know, crisis numbers, even like putting crisis numbers like 988, all of those like the Trevor Project, like the hotline, all of those numbers, like maybe in their syllabus. Like I think that would be a really great idea. So students like remember that these numbers are available to them for them to like call whenever they're in a crisis. So I think that kind of like professors and administrators and faculty figuring out like what their level of like transparency is in terms of like talking about mental health, and kind of like I think as students we do respect that. So just like understanding like that there is this like boundary, but still we can all like be, you know, like positive about each other's mental health and supportive. So I think that's also really important.
No, you guys nailed it, or you definitely nailed it. I think from the perspective of teachers, you know, the adults, our job is to put the resources at your fingertips, because I think the best teachers among you all are you. And so putting the resources in your hands and letting you guys just go and run with it and teach one another is one of the dopest, you know, forms of education. And that's why Active Minds, we're changing the game with this whole conversation. We're putting the resources in your hands and, you know, young people, and letting you guys lead it. So question for you, let's have a little bit of fun. Let's shift gears. What are some of your favorite self-care strategies and things that you do? Maybe things that people may think are, it could be weird, but you know that it's mindfulness for you. Like for me, I'm like a big kid. Like I have fidget spinners all around me. So that's one thing that most people would be like, what? But it's mindfulness for me. What are some of your self-care strategies that people wouldn't think are actually strategies, but they work for you?
Yeah, good question. I have like a lot of random things that I do to kind of help me feel better. I think actually one of the strategies I have is that with self-care, I feel like you can find the strategy that works for you, right? So like let's say you really enjoy journaling. But I think something that I really like to emphasize to myself is that, okay, I really enjoy journaling, but let's say one day I just do not feel like journaling and it would feel like a chore. I feel like the most important thing to do in that moment is to say, okay, I don't need to journal right now. Even though like myself, I consider that to be self-care. It's okay if today maybe I just lay in bed and like watch Netflix, do something completely different than that. I think that's something that's like really important, not to be a perfectionist in self-care. I think that's something I like to remind myself. I would also just say like some other random strategies is I really like to collect stuffed animals or like even like look at like cute Sanrio characters. I don't know, like cute things like
Zoe,
make
that is so
me
cool.
happy. Yeah, thank you. I have a younger sister and she has a lot of really cute stuffed animals. So I like to play with them with her and it's just it's really random. I'm a college student, but I still really enjoy doing that. And yeah, just kind of also keeping my surroundings like a little bit organized or clean, I find to be just like really nice when I wake up in the morning and like my room is clean or that sort of thing. It just makes me like feel like I can take a deep breath, which so cleaning can be considered like a chore for some people. For me, it can be more of a self-care thing. So yeah, it looks different for everyone, but just most important, I think just don't pressure yourself to do a technique if you don't feel like doing it that day. It's completely okay.
That's dope insight. I love it. Anishka, what about you?
Um, I really love candles. Like my apartment is like kind of like there's candles everywhere. So I just like, even though it's, I feel like it's a very like a lot of people do this, but like lighting a candle, like I don't know, I'll like light candles and like clean my apartment like pretty much like every couple of days because like Zoe was saying, I'm also very much like a neat freak. So I need everything to be like, like in order, like my desk has to be like spotless, like that kind of thing. So I love vacuuming. I think it's like so relaxing. And every time I tell this to my friends, they're like, you're so weird. But I'm like, hey, you know what? It works for me. So I will do it. But yeah, another thing I love to do is reading. I love to also like collect books, but I actually do read them too. It's just during the year, there's not that much time because of school. So like I'll read a lot during breaks and like the summer. I love like self-help books. So I'm really big on that. And like one last thing I would say is there's this like little like pet store like near me. So like I've always wanted a dog. So basically I'll go in there and like they let you play with like puppies for like 15 minutes. So like I've like become friends with like the people who work there. So like I play with puppies for like 20 or 25 minutes like every week. So that's something else.
Hey, that's also smart because you're also saving money because animals are expensive. So you're saving money. You're cutting down costs while, practicing self-care. And so I think that's important to note. Self-care can look a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. It's going to involve your personality, is going to involve who you are at the core, is going to involve like your culture, how you grew up. So self-care it can look several different ways. I just one quick question before we close up here and kind of shift gears for our students. Can you just share one more time how vital self-care is for them? Just a one-liner of how important it is.
Yeah, I would love to say that self-care is really just really important for you to function as a human, and to reach the goals that you desire, you really need to take care of yourself first. And I think ultimately self-care is kind of like a mindset. So especially applicable to school is learning new things can be self-care. So if you go into that next class and you think about, okay, I'm about to learn a lot of new things that's going to make me a different person and grow, that can be a form of self-care. So I think
All
just
right.
that and focusing on that.
All right. Thank you so much for that. As we close out, I want to just say thank you, Anushka and Zoe, for tuning in with us and having this critical discussion. Stay tuned for our upcoming live, our YouTube live, September 6th at 3 o'clock, where we're going to be talking about something different. So tune in. We won't tell you. We don't spoil it. Tune in and you'll find out. Thanks everyone for joining. Peace.